Okay, guys, we're back live here, Radio Techers, and it's time for what we're tentatively calling the Volley. This is our wrap up of the weekend stuff. So let's just get into the intro, shall we? See if I can get this right for once, can we? Here we go. Indeed, we are here on Radio Techers to bring you the roundup for Matchday 6, if I'm right here. I am Matt Willis, and I'm joined by the podfather himself, Mag, who is pulling a lot of
Kablam.
kablam, sir, kablam. And of course, we are also rejoined by Radio Techers Chief or Senior Field Analyst, Mr. Chris Harris.
Both.
It's both. Is it? Okay.
Chief
Both,
Senior
yeah.
is the Chief
Exactly.
I
Senior.
think I might have put it down in the comments right then. Okay, cool.
The ever expanding title.
Every banning title, you get a bigger title than any field I've ever seen before. It's ridiculous, but great. Gentlemen, we are going to be going through all 10 matches. We're going to try and get them as fast as we can. Hello to Conor McCabe in the chat. Always good to have you along, sir. And Thanos' daddy on Twitch. That's a new one for me. Indeed. Let's snap to it. So, shall we, gentlemen?
Oh, boo! That was disgusting.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's getting late here in the UK, but you know, we got a lot to we've got a few matches to run through here. So, how about, gentlemen, we start with the first game of the weekend, which is actually a game we actually covered on Techers, which was Chelsea versus Manchester City. Safe to say that I think a lot of us actually on Techers that day actually thought this was an upset.
I mean, upset's a strong word because City are they're the incumbent champions. They're free scoring, but I think it was the fact that Chelsea went with two out and out strikers, and Man City still had this role where they don't have a real designated number 9. But this match just didn't live up to the hype. These two have been scoring goals for fun, and it was just drab to watch. For all the first half, I think there was only 2 shots on target all the way through. It livened up a lot in the second half, and City kind of really started to walk away with it. But yeah, Chelsea were just an absolute letdown. When you've got strikers the quality of Lukaku and Werner, you think that they would get goals, but they were just absolutely crowded out by this City team. A fairly lucky goal with the almost like a miss it from Jesuit for the goal, and City
You're
take the
never
points.
letting me hear the end of that one, are you?
Great spelling, Jesuit.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse. Chris, what was your take on things? Because you thought having Mendy back in goal to Kepa looked more resilient at the back, Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Mag said was true. It was a bit of a dull game, and these big games do tend to be. You know, you rarely see free-flowing attacking football with these big games because now the team wants to lose. And I mean, you know, these are the 2 best defenses in the league. I mean, Chelsea and Man City coming into this game had both only conceded 1 goal in 5 games, so it was always going to be a tight affair. And I think Tuchel's tactics, in and of themselves, sort of sum that up. You know, instead of going with the 3-4-3, he deviated. He put that extra man in midfield, the flat 3 with Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic. And like Mag said, having Lukaku and Werner up front, the plan was obviously to get James and Alonso bombing down the flanks and trying to support Lukaku and Werner that way. But obviously, you know, half an hour in, that plan went straight out the window. Yeah, and I think it was just, like I say, it was a case of now the team wanted to lose. But Man City just, you know, did what Man City did. They kept the ball well. And, you know, eventually they managed to get that breakthrough, which, you know, any other team it wouldn't be a surprise. I mean, I don't really think you can call it a surprise here because no win involving Man City can be called an upset. But I do think that it was very interesting to see how, in Tuchel's mind, sort of how he adapted his game plan. And obviously it didn't work out, but it'll be interesting to see how he lines up. Next game week. Obviously he's got Juventus midweek and then Southampton at home. So it'll be interesting to see if he goes back to the 3-4-3 or whether this flat 3 in midfield is something that he wants to stick with.
Yeah, Juventus obviously starting to think about themselves a bit in Italy, so not going to be an easy game for Chelsea on Wednesday night. Southampton on next weekend, though, should be on paper a game to get back on track. It did seem interesting that
I suppose City thought that though when they faced Southampton recently, and Southampton are good at upsetting the big guys.
This is quite true, and it also did show that Tuchel is human. I suppose he can be out tactited. Is that even a word? Tactited?
I think it is, but I don't think you said it right.
No, he was out fought for sure by Guardiola. Speaking about being out fought, other side of Manchester was the next game, of course, and this was a game which it made me as a Liverpool fan chuckle. Not sure how it made the other claret and blue supporters feel. We'll start with Chris first.
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange one, this, because, on the surface, Man United, they had more possession, they had more chances, they had higher XG, they had a higher pass accuracy. You'd think that if you just looked at the stats, you'd assume that, that there was a Man United victory, that it was, a very, comfortable game. But there were quite a few instances, especially at the back for Man United, where they looked dodgy. A couple of misplaced passes from De Gea, or Shaw getting caught on that left-hand side. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, it was just Villa were making life difficult. I think the switch to a back 3 from Villa was very smart. It allowed Cash and Target to provide the width rather than having designated wingers out wide. As well as being able to partner Watkins and Ings up front. And Watkins especially made life very difficult for that Man United backline. And also it allows, when Man United were attacking, to drop back into a back 5 and isolate, the likes of Ronaldo, because Ronaldo did nothing. Obviously Villa got a little bit of luck at the end of the game with Fernandez's frankly awful penalty. I don't know what he was thinking there. But yeah, I think on the balance of things, it was definitely. I think Villa definitely deserved to get something out of this game. And yeah, it was a very smart switch from Dean Smith to go through at the back, and one that paid off.
Absolutely, Mags. What do you have to add to this? Because you were watching this, of course, at the same time as we were watching Man City Chelsea. And
by totally legitimate means, as Connor in the
I don't know why
says.
the inverted commas are there.
I will say that it did look a much better game than the one we were watching.
Yeah, and I think Chris absolutely nails it. If you look at this from a purely statistical point of view, Man United dominated in almost every metric. But watching the game, it was actually Villa who I thought had the better chances. I mean, there was a chance for Matty Target, which he ballooned over from 6 yards. Ollie Watkins did really well. Ezri Konsa headed over. And then obviously the goal coming from the corner. And that could have been such almost a bittersweet day for Courtney, giving away the penalty. Luckily for Villa, Bruno Fernandes, the prancing pony, ballooned it over, and some say that the ball is still not hit the ground yet. But yeah, it was tactically a really astute way for Villa to play. They knew that Man United were going to come and dominate in terms of possession, in terms of chances, and I think Villa did really well to kind of keep Man United at bay. And looking at the stats, we've got Man United on 28 shots compared to Villa's 7, but only 4 of those shots were on target from Man United. So that just shows how good, how solid that Aston Villa defence were at keeping those shots away from Emi Martinez's goal. I mean, Tyrone Mings, he had a belter of a game. He was throwing himself at pretty much everything that Man United threw at Aston Villa. So it was a good result, a well played game by Aston Villa, and I feel that they deserve the points.
I feel they did too. Tyrone Mings definitely was showing more of a form which took him to the Euro, where he had some good games, of course. As you guys mentioned about the three at the back, it does show Dean Smith willing to change things game by game. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that this three at the back will work at every team, but if they keep Ronaldo quiet, he scored every game this season up until today.
Yeah,
well, not today, but this weekend anyway. And it was certainly a tough day at the office for Ole. Some people were calling for his head after the game.
I mean, that happens after every single Man United defeat. And
they're so fickle.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the statistics, Ole is one of the better managers that they've actually had in terms of getting results and getting points on the board. The style of football is not what the Man United of the 90s and 2000s are used to, but unfortunately, times is passing Man United by, and they've got to realise that the likes of Liverpool, Chelsea, and City have all improved vastly since that period of dominance by Man United, and it's not the one-horse race that the league used to be.
Indeed. I'm just getting word, by the way, from Josh Robinson in Australia that the Bruno Fernandes penalty had just gone flying past his window. So yeah, it's I can say that because everyone's doing some of their jokes. It's all good. Right, so Man United obviously losing in Aston with that advantage, of course. It meant that United missed a chance to go clear up top of the table, especially what we can actually end up doing. Talk about the missed opportunities. Everton and Norwich. Norwich making one of the worst starts to a Premier League in history here.
Yeah. I mean, what is it now for Norwich? Is it, 16, 17 losses in a row in the Premier League?
I believe so.
I mean, obviously, that's a bit of a fudge stack. It's over 2 seasons, but still, it's grim reading. I mean, for a newly promoted team, usually they have that, that little bit of fight. What we've seen in Brentford and Watford. They've had that bit of fire.
Yeah,
they've had
and
that
Brighton.
passion. Yeah, exactly. But newly promoted teams, especially, they ride the wave, sort of, the momentum of, being brilliant in the Championship. They come up, they have that fight in them, and they'll go on, and they're not going to beat everyone, but they're going to, at least turn up and give teams a game. And
even Bradford did that when they came up first time round.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they just haven't done that, Norwich. I mean, obviously, the loss of Emi Buendia was hard on them. I mean, the guy was involved with 40%, whether it was through a goal or assist. He was involved in 40% of their goals last season. So obviously that's a huge loss. And I mean, I don't think they replaced them right. I think, the likes of Rashica, Sargent, it's all right spreading the money out, but all that gets you is a bunch of bang average players. Sure, they might be great
championship level players.
Yeah, exactly. There might be good 3 or 4 years down the line, but you can't fill your team up with 21-year-olds when you're trying to survive in the Premier League.
No.
Norwich are sort of stuck in this sort of yo-yo team sort of existence. Exactly, and they need to break out of that. And if they've already hit the panic button, usually you don't see teams radically change stuff until February, March time. But I mean, Norwich are already, they're constantly rotating the centre halves, constantly changing formation. It doesn't feel like Farke's come into this season with a plan. I don't think he knows his best team. And I think that this season is going to be really long for Norwich. And, I know some people who think that Norwich are going to break Derby's record. It just looks that grim at the moment for Norwich. And I can't see where they pick up any points, never mind 3 points.
No, I've got to agree. I think you hit the nail right on the head by saying that Norwich are in this this yo-yo team status. I think that's going to be their kind of setup for the next few years because they're clearly too good to be a Championship team, but they're not good enough to be a Premier League team. And like you said, the players that they've brought in are potentially great players. But right now, they are not good players. They're certainly not Premier League level players. And when you're coming up against an Everton team who were kind of a little bit out of sorts. I mean, Benitez has not had the best he's not had the best of setups here at Everton. The fans are not entirely happy with him being there. And when Everton come and they are easily dominant, not in terms of statistics, but in terms of not worried about any chance of Norwich scoring. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then when you couple that with silly mistakes like the Kabak foul on Allen, which led to the first goal, yeah, you're always going to struggle, especially when you haven't got that firepower up front to fight back. And unfortunately, I can see this happening time and time again with Norwich. And I actually like Norwich. I remember them from the early 90s where they came up and they were a ball of energy and they even got into Europe with Mark Robbins up front. This is a million miles away from that level of Norwich. I think we'll see Norwich bouncing up and down the divisions quite a lot over the next few years.
Yeah. And I'd say this is even a million miles away the Norwich team of 2 years ago. I mean, at least then you could see the direction.
Hope.
Yeah, exactly. There was positivity about fight. Yeah, exactly. They knew they weren't good enough to be a Premier League team, but you could see the vision. You could see where they wanted to be. When they had players like Godfrey, when they had players like Buendia, Cantwell was there. They had a good young sort of core of players that in 2 or 3 years' time, if they could have kept them together, could have really built into a decent team. But the fact is that if you're going to get relegated, all those players are going to get poached off of you, and it's your job to be able to replace them with better young players, or not necessarily better young players, but replacements for those young players. And that's something that they just haven't done, Norwich. I mean, this team compare this Norwich team now, to the Norwich team of 2 seasons ago, and they look like they've regressed so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about people thinking that they may beat Derby's record for lowest points in the Premier League. There's only Portsmouth and Palace who've had a worse start to a Premier League season than Norwich.
And that is concerning for sure for Norwich fans. Obviously, because if they're getting the fans back in, they want to be seeing their team do well. As a Colchester boy, I'm happy to see them do badly. But to be fair, I do feel bad for their fans. I do. As bad as Norwich were, Everton, though, didn't do too bad themselves. Did they got the job done?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Corey's in a real purple patch of scoring.
Yeah, he was always under at Watford. He was always sort of held back. He was playing in this sort of number 6 role, and it wasn't until in the latter half of Watford's relegation season where they sort of moved him forward into a sort of number 10 position almost, where we saw him flourish. With his goal scoring acumen, because he's a big, strong midfielder. Physically, he's really capable of bombing up and down the pitch, and it's all about getting the best out of that. And I think that he really does that in this Everton team. I think that Doucouré, alongside Alan, I think that's a really good partnership. It's rock solid. It has that grit that you need in the midfield too, because most teams play with the midfield 3. So if you play with the midfield 2, you need some proper grit in there. Yeah. And that's something that Doucouré and Alan both provide. And Doucouré as well has that attacking impetus. Yeah, I think he's a really good player, Doucouré.
Absolutely.
I have nothing but agreement with you, gentlemen. This is it's going quite well. For some people, a fight didn't break out, but a good match did. Leeds 1, West Ham 2. Mags, kick us off.
Yeah, this was a very entertaining game. I actually got to watch along with a friend of the show, Steve O, whilst he was doing a stream with Elite FPL. And he was certainly excited about this game. Great opening goal by Rafinha. Absolutely stunner. A shame for Junior Firpo with the deflection from Bowen, and actually on the replay, it takes two deflections, so doubly unlucky for Leeds. But they were under the cosh for the last few minutes of this game, and you could always sense that Antonio wanted a goal, and what a goal it was! Brilliant touch, well taken. Took the man out of the game and slotted the ball past the keeper. West Ham in the clutch, but it's a shame because this Leeds team is so exciting to watch, and I feel that the bought players that improve the side. It's just that the results are not going their way. I mean, this was a Leeds team who were kicking arse last season, and now they're down with the scumbags like Norwich and Burnley. It's quite worrying for Bielsa. Have Leeds been found out?
I don't think they have. I personally feel they just had not like rubber green going their way so far. They'll come good, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this game, I think it'd be hard to say that West Ham didn't deserve all 3 points. I think they were the better team overall. But I think with Leeds, I think because second season syndrome is a thing. There's a few exceptions, but in general, teams will struggle a lot more in the second season than the first season. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get relegated, but it does mean that they will, struggle more. I mean, look at Sheffield United last season. That's the perfect example. I mean, they were, basically in the exact same position that Leeds were. I think Sheffield United finished 8th or 9th or something. They were just outside of Europe, and then they finished bottom comfortably. No, I don't think that's going to happen to Leeds. I think there'll be 3 worse teams than Leeds. But they are really struggling, and they're shipping goals for fun. I mean, they've got the second worst defence in the league besides Norwich. But I mean, the defence has always been an issue for Leeds, but usually, or last season, it was the case that they were able to outscore the other teams, and that hasn't been the case. I think obviously they have been unlucky with injuries to the centre halves. I mean, centre half pairing of Cooper and Cresswell, just it's not Premier League quality. So I think once their centre halves come back to full fitness, I think that will be something that we see more is a tighter defence. But I basically I don't think Leeds will go down. I don't want to go into the cliche or they're too good to go down because no team's too good to go down. But I do think that there will be 3 worse teams than Leeds. Sorry, that wasn't a very analytical approach, but
no, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think Leeds will be safe for sure. West Ham, I think, carrying where they're going, they're going to be fighting for Europa again this year quite comfortably.
I mean, West Ham have got a hard run when the European games really kick in.
Yeah.
We'll see exactly what kind of metal they've got, whether they've got the strength in depth to fight on all these fronts. But as of now, they're doing exactly what they did at the tail end of last season. That's kicking ass and winning games, which is what you need.
Indeed, they're still in the EFL Cup as well, which means they've got more games on top of that as well. Because usually, West Ham fans, they're usually out in round 2 or 3. They can focus on the league and everything like that. But they're fighting on 3 fronts this year so far. So good luck to them, I say for sure. Talking about other teams who are in the European fight, and well, Leicester usually are, and Burnley have been in Europe.
You were coasting round it. Let's call a spade, Matt. Burnley were robbed. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I said to you on Tegra before we went off the air from Chelsea Man City game that Burnley are going to win this game. And I was so close to being right.
You're about half a yard away from being right.
I mean, I've watched the ruled out goal, and I hate VR for this specific reason. He's given offside because of his arm.
No, it was his foot. His foot was offside.
So from what I saw, it looked like the arm. Then if it's
to be fair,
foot, then that's the case. I take that back. But
to be fair, that's what I saw first was the arm. But there was a different angle, what I don't think they showed, which did show that his foot was offside. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I haven't seen that.
I did think that initially, to be fair.
And it's a real bugbear of mine where a part of the body that you cannot score a goal with can be classed as offside. It really annoys me. And this whole kind of not giving the striker advantage anymore, that really grinds me. But we both agreed in our group chat before this match, if people said you'll get a point away at Leicester, we would have bit their hands off. It's just annoying when we soak up all Leicester's pressure, and we for long periods of the game we're actually the better team, and we are not able to convert that into a win. But a point against Leicester is a very hard-earned point. I think Maxwell Cornet looked absolutely outstanding. He's certainly, I've seen interviews with Darch and a couple of players, and they've said he's absolutely raised the level of quality in Burnley. Everyone wants to play better because of Maxwell Cornet. How we've got a player of his caliber, and the finish that he took was it was sublime, absolutely sublime. I have no worries that we'll be able to fight our way out of this. It's concerning that we've only got 2 points out of a possible 18, but that's kind of like the Burnley way. We have to make things harder for ourselves before we dig out. But props to Jamie Vardy though for getting a hat trick, a very unconventional hat trick. But I'm happy with the way that Burnley performed. We've struggled for goals, and now with Cornet, I think it shows that perhaps we can be among the goals and we can play some fluid football, which was really good to see.
Indeed.
I don't necessarily think... Oh, sorry, go on.
I do have to quickly say, Conor McCabe in the chat, he's just asking... He's causing trouble, what he's doing here. Chris, how does it feel that Burnley are going to be relegated?
Well, I mean, at least an art spell does. But it's all right, because I'll we're both getting relegated, so it's fine. No, but I think it's not necessarily just Cornet. I think replacing Barnes with Vidra, that also raises the level of his team. Because I mean, the work that Vidra puts in, because Barnes isn't good enough. Let's be honest. I mean, I really like the guy. He's been a great servant to us over the years, but he is not Premier League quality anymore. He doesn't even win fouls for us anymore. That was the one thing he was good at last season. He doesn't even do that anymore. So yeah, I think sort of having a front four of Cornet, McNeil, Wood, and Vidra, I think that does sort of it opens us up more, it makes play more expansive football. I will say I don't like McNeil on the right. I think that he's too one-dimensional to play on the right wing. I feel like Cornet would be better suited on the right with McNeil on the left. I feel like that would be a way to get the best out of both of us wingers, because that's what we need to be doing. And yeah, I think if we keep that front four, I think scoring for us will be fine. It's just for some reason his defense has just fallen asleep. I think Charlie Taylor has had a really tough start to the season. I think that a lot of I don't like blaming individual players, but quite a few of the goals this season have come down that the opponent's right hand side, our left hand side, and it's been from individual mistakes from Charlie Taylor. And with Eric Peters, saying how he wants to play, how he's unhappy being sat on the bench at this stage in his career, you got to think maybe Peters will be, getting a chance potentially ahead of Taylor. Because I think Taylor's brilliant going forward, but it's just defensively, he does lack a little bit of that. I think Lawton as well, he had a brilliant game today. But I think the past few games he has struggled a little bit, and you got to think, with Connor Roberts, coming back from injury, you got to think how long is it going to be before he starts breathing down his neck. But I don't know. I just think I think we'll be fine. I think that what we've shown over these past 6 games, I think we deserve more than 2 points from his first 6 games. And I think that if we play like we have done with Cornet and Vidra both on the pitch for the entire season, we'll be more than fine.
Yeah, and I think my biggest concern now is keeping the defensive partnership of me and Tark. One concern I've got is, have they got one eye on the way out? Is that a reason why maybe they go into sleeping games? Because I know Tark has refused deals. His contract's up, I think, in the summer, and I don't think Ben Mee's got that long of a contract as well.
His contract's up at the end of the summer as well as Ben Mee, but I can't see him leaving personally. I mean, he's been here 12 years now. I can't see him leaving. He's captain. Been here over a decade. I think he seems at home here. Whereas Tarkowski, he does deserve that sort of step up. He deserves to play in European football. I think that wherever he goes, he'll be a brilliant suitor. But I think we've got Nathan Collins on the bench, who he's still young. He's a 20-year-old centre half, so he's still learning. He's not going to be the finished article straight away. But I think that from what he's shown, in a Burnley shirt, what few games he has played, and also what he showed for Stoke, I think he'll more than be capable of slotting into that position next season once Tarkowski does eventually move on.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't add anything more to that, gentlemen. You did a fine job indeed.
Well, I'm always interested to hear what, because obviously we're going to have a different perspective on Burnley to you. Well, because we have our claret tinted glasses on.
You do, well, in your own words, not mine. However, I do feel that you look a lot better with Cornet. There's no question or shadow of a doubt that he has improved your side. How much did you get him for in the end again?
Like 12.5
million euros.
Or was it 15?
So roughly £12.5 million. I think we're paying it over like 4 seasons or something like that.
It's madness. It's I mean, he would fit into teams way bigger than us. And he would be an absolute star. Yeah. It's amazing that we've got a player of that caliber in Burnley.
Yeah. And it's usually with those sorts of players coming on a cheap, you usually think, oh well, he might have an attitude problem or something like that. But he seems willing, during games, he's always grafting, he's tracking back. It's what you need in a team like us. He's always, he's fighting for those 50-50s. And off the pitch, everyone says he's glowing. He's always got a smile on his face. He seems to have lifted the morale. I remember after the Arsenal game, they said he sent a message to the WhatsApp group or someone saying, "Oh, come on, keep your heads up, lads. We played well that game," sort of thing.
That's what we need. Yeah, that's what we need. Yeah.
The key to it for sure over the next season or two is keeping hold of him, because you get players like him, you'll get other players like him, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean that's always been a sticking point with Burnley, is that we get players in relatively cheap and we make a shed load of money on them. Because
that's the only way we can get income, because we don't have an 80,000 seat stadium. We don't have thousands and thousands of overseas fans. We don't get the big rub of the TV deals. So the majority of the way and we don't have a billionaire owner. So the majority of our income that we can get for future transfers is from player sales.
Yeah.
I think obviously that'll change. That could change now that we've got Alan Pace in charge, and I think that he has shown that he's willing to spend more money than Garlic did. But it's still not a huge amount. He's not being flashy with it. He's still being prudent. He's still being sensible with it.
Which I like. I mean, we spoke on Radio Tech about teams essentially spending hundreds and hundreds of millions to not get any further up the table. I would rather he's sensible with his money, gets the right players in, uses the company that he bought in terms of player analytics to find the players that Burnley need, rather than go and spend 40-50 million on a big name who doesn't fit into the squad.
Yeah, and you have to think that AI Scout, which is the company that you're talking about, you have to think that they played a big part in identifying Maxwell Cornet, because usually our scouts don't go past Barnoldswick. So
they usually are bin dippers, we call them here, where they go rooted in the Championship or League One. But to get Cornet it's phenomenal, and hopefully that will inspire other cheap but quality players to maybe come and ply their trade at turf.
Right. So, talking about players who need to improve here, 2 sets of players actually. In fact, we're going to go Watford and Newcastle, who this game, apparently, from what I can tell, had more yellow cards dished out than shots on target.
I mean, that's a stretch, because I think there was 10 shots total on target. This for me was a make or break for both teams. Both needed a standout performance. Obviously, Newcastle and Steve Bruce is getting so much abuse. I actually don't even think he's close to losing his job, because Mark Ashley he's loving the fact that the abuse is being directed at Bruce rather than being directed at him. But in terms of what's happening on the pitch, it's been woeful for Newcastle. Even the players who were good last season, the likes of Willock, likes of Almiron, are just not showing up. There's only one player who seems to have any passion for Newcastle, and that's St. Maximin. And he was their shining light in this game again. But Watford and Sarr have kind of like St. Maximin. They've been Sarr's been Watford's shining light. Is that actually the odds of him to be fired?
Is the odds, yeah.
Watching this game though, or watching the highlights of this game, I feel sorry for the likes of Darlow, who I think he's way better than Newcastle give him credit for. Some of the saves he made, I mean, he does a great double save from, I think it was Dennis, and where he essentially saves and then he's on the floor and has to get back up for a lightning quick reaction to stop the goal again. I feel that there's no passion there for Newcastle. And yeah, they're going to go down, I think, over Leeds. Watford, I think they showed more passion, they showed more grit. So I think that they're more likely to be safe. But yeah, these are two teams that are going to struggle.
Yeah, I think because it's blatantly obvious that Bruce has lost the dressing room. You know, all the signs point to the fact that Bruce just doesn't command any sort of respect from his players. And it's obvious with the performances. You know, there's, like you say, there's no sort of fire from Newcastle, you know, which, you know, you get from other teams around that. And that's what propels you up the table. And yet, you know, they are going to struggle if they keep on like this, you know, because it's not like they don't have the quality. You know, they've got brilliant players, you know, St. Maximin, Wilson, Willock, you know, they're, you know, Almiron, you know, like you said, Darlow in net.
Joel Linton.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, like you said, they're good enough to be, you know, playing for a top half Premier League club. And Newcastle, that's where Newcastle should be aiming to be. You know, not necessarily, you know, going for Europe or whatever, but just consistent, you know, not having to battle relegation. And, you know, that's not going to happen at this rate. And Watford, I think for Watford, it was all about white. Oh, Jesus Christ. It was all about riding that wave of promotion, of the momentum that we were talking about with Norwich that they didn't do. It was all about riding the wave of promotion, of the momentum, you know, carrying it forward into this season. Because after, you know, these first 6 games, they've got an absolutely killer run. You know, the next few games, they've got Leeds away, Liverpool at home, Everton away, we've got Southampton at home, then Arsenal away, Man United at home, Leicester away, Chelsea at home, and Man City at home. You know, that is an absolutely brutal run of games. You know, and
I mean, they're on 7 points now. You could see after that run them still being on 7 points.
Exactly. Yeah, you know, so like I say, it was all about getting as many points on the board as they could at the moment. And I think they've done well. You know, they beat Norwich, which was something that they had to do. You know, you have to be beating the teams around you if, you know, you wanted to stay up, especially as a newly promoted club. You know, they beat Villa on the opening day 3-2 really well. They rode that momentum. You know, I think they are very reliant on Sarr. I think Sarr is, you know, like we're talking about Cornet, Sarr is head and shoulders above Watford. You can tell he's just a class above the rest of those players. Everything in this game came down that right-hand side with Sarr, and that was sort of summed up with the goal. I think he's brilliant, Sarr. You know, he really struggled the first half of the season in the Championship. They're sort of playing him out of position on the left. But as soon as they moved him onto the right with Cisco, he really, you know, sort of stepped up and came into his own. And I think that form's sort of continuing. And yet it's all about whether they can get Sarr firing and keep him firing, whether Watford will stay up, because it's going to be tough. You know, you look at that team, to me, that doesn't scream a Premier League quality team, but there are individuals who are Premier League quality. So I think it's going to be tough for Watford, but I don't think it looks as dire as, you know, Newcastle or, you know, a lot of other teams who are in and around that position. You know, if you ask me this in 6-7 weeks' time, I might be saying a different thing.
I think you're absolutely right. But one thing that does scream out from the Watford team, as opposed to the Newcastle team, is there's heart, there's passion, there's energy, there's grit, there's a willingness to work. Outside of St Maximin for Newcastle, there's nothing, and it's sad to see because they're one of the biggest clubs in the country, and they used to be so dominant, and now they're a shell. Now they're one of the favourites to go down. It's a shame.
I fully agree. Chris, you were saying you think that Steve Bruce has lost the dressing room. Question I have for both of you at this point: did he ever have it?
I mean, I could jump in. I think at one point he did. I think at one point he was one of the most refreshing kind of. I don't want to say new style managers because he's certainly got a very old kind of 4-4-2 Matt Bassett style ideologies of football. But he brought truth, he brought passion, he brought a love of the game. But I think with the influx of foreign managers, the influx of playing different formations, I feel he's been left behind. I feel he's almost like a throwback to the old style of English football, and I just don't think his style fits Premier League football anymore.
I feel that's fair. And 3-1 may actually be quite generous at the moment. Right, speaking about generous, Liverpool were quite generous with the goals given away this weekend.
Were they generous though, or were they just held back by a very dominant, brutal, strong Brentford performance? I think
Brentford were amazing. Without a question. They managed to put more goals past Liverpool than any club has been able to recently, including AC Milan.
Not including Aston Villa.
In recent times, that's over a year ago, sir. So, Brentford did a very good job here. Arguably deserved to win it as well. Technically, they had a winner ruled out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only just offside.
Both teams could have won this. I mean, Liverpool had the ball in the net half a dozen times, but this for me shows exactly why I love Brentford being in the Premier League. They are so hard working as a unit. They're not making it easy for anyone. They don't give a shit about your reputation. They don't care who you are as a manager. They don't care how much you've spent on your players. They have got balls, and I absolutely love it. They're not afraid of anybody, and it's so refreshing to see.
You do love Moneyball, don't you?
I think that Moneyball concept, whilst it's probably flawed long term, I think the way that Brentford have kind of tried to shake up football with not having their own youth system and really kind of going out and using, I think they use the AI Scout software to get these players in. I think it's working now, and it's good to see. And Ivan Toney is I thought he may have found his level in the Championship, and I thought he might struggle in the Premiership. Absolutely not. I think he's working wonders. He's ever the £50 million striker that I'm sure that Brentford could get for him.
Chris, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think there's always a newly promoted team that like Brentford have done this season, that always shows that bit of grit. Because newly promoted teams in general don't have the quality that established Premier League teams do. That's always a saying, is that if you remove three teams, and the three teams that get relegated always seem stronger than the three teams that come up. That's 9 times out of 10, that's the perception, and it's because of that Premier League money, more or less. So there are always teams that do that, and most of them, they'll either go on and push on, have a really good season, finish near top half or top half, or they get a few injuries. The squad rotation, squad depth, catches up to them, And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Brentford. I mean, because you can't predict the table 6 games in. I think halfway through the season last season, Man City were like 11th or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Tottenham were leading at this time last season.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can't, look too much into this, the table at this stage. But the way Brentford are playing, if they can keep this up, all season, they'll be absolutely fine. Because, they don't have the quality. They have good players, but they don't have the quality that most of the Premier League clubs around them do. But I will say that I think that front two especially is, very good. I think, like Mags, I thought Ivan Toney, his stats looked better than he played last season. I think a lot of his goals, they were Poacher's goals. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they all count. You have to be in the right positions. But it wasn't like, it was Tony running the show at Brentford last season. But I think that front two with Mbeumo and Tony, they press so hard for 90 minutes and press so high. And it just works wonders for them. And, that whole system that they have, it works. And it really, it upset Liverpool. They didn't like it. They didn't like that smash mouth style. And at the end, it forced them, especially with the pressing high, it forced them into 2 stupid mistakes that led to, Brentford, getting back into the game and ultimately getting a point which was well deserved.
Yeah. Very, very well deserved. And I can say, as a Liverpool fan, I hate games like this. Being as a fan watching a game like this, because you always want a nice easy 3-0, move on. That's what you always want. I don't like scrappy games like this. They take your blood pressure through the roof.
I mean, there were still positives for Liverpool. I thought Jota was lively, energetic. Could on another day could have easily had a hat trick. The goal by Curtis Jones was superb. And then you've obviously got Salah, who got his 100 goals for Liverpool. It's just those defensive errors. And against Brentford, they punished here. The likes of Wissa, I think, is a great signing. Aya was solid at the back. I mean, there was a point where he got injured and he was hobbling. 2 minutes later, he was clearing the goal off the line. It's just the heart and the passion that Brentford are showing as a unit. They're proving a lot of the doubters wrong, I think.
And I'm very happy about that, and I'm very happy that we have them as Taker's adopted team of the season. Someone who wished they were probably Southampton Wolves. This was after the great result they got last week, we were hoping they were going to plough on. Southampton did not.
Yeah, what a Jekyll and Hyde performance.
Yeah.
I mean, they dominated, and I mean dominated in this game. 18 shots to 5, 6 on target, 57% of the ball. But they didn't look like they were going to come away with the win. And then Jimenez pops up and essentially they steal the victory. Southampton got exactly what they deserved for not putting this game to bed way before the goal. It should have been a cakewalk for Southampton, and it just wasn't.
It was absolutely comfortable for Wolves. The only threat really came from that right-hand side with Livramento. He was the only sort of attacking threat that Southampton had. You had, Adams, you had Adam Armstrong, you had Broyer, the Chelsea loanee, you had Shane Long. You're getting on all these attackers, but they're not doing anything. And I just think that they're really going to struggle. They sold their 2 best players last season in Vestergaard and Ings. They let Ryan Bertrand go on a free. He was a long servant there. He wasn't brilliant, but he was still having that sort of stability there. I mean, he's gone to Leicester, so clearly he's a rated player. He's a good player. And the replacements that they've got haven't been up to scratch. I mean, Adam Armstrong couldn't hold a candle to Danny Ings. So they are really going to struggle this season, Southampton, and they will be in and around it. Come the end of the season. To answer Connor's question about Wolves, I don't think that Wolves will make Europe this season. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like you say, you can't really read too much into the table this time, this season. But like Southampton, Wolves have really struggled to score. I mean, they're the second lowest scorers in the league at this point. They've only scored 3 goals in 6 games. I think that if Raul Jimenez can get firing, maybe that will be able to propel them up the table. But to be honest with you, I don't think that they have the quality. I think this is sort of a transition season for Wolves to sort of get away from the Nuno style that had gone stale. And, I think they'll propel themselves up the table. I don't think they'll be in a relegation scrap by any means. But I can't see them getting Europe, to be honest with you.
I've got a lot of time for Raul Jimenez now. I mean, it was something like nearly exactly a year, give or take, maybe a few days out since he had that injury. Something before he never play again. But thank goodness he was back. It's the way he sat with the defender down and then passed it into the back of the net. It was a real joy to see. Little bit upset that Southampton didn't follow up that great result at the Etihad last week, but I really wish to bet Southampton, but I've got a really bad feeling about them this year.
Yeah, I think Chris pretty much hit the nail on there. They've let good players go and not replaced them with quality. And the one outstanding player that they've got left now in Ward-Prowse, he was anonymous. He was quiet. It's not looking good for Southampton at all.
No.
Yeah, and the really amazing thing is because it's Cisco in charge of Wolves, isn't it?
Lage.
No, it's Bruno Lage.
Yeah. Bruno Lage. Where's Cisco managing?
He's at Watford.
Watford. It's all W. That's fine.
I mean, similar badges.
Chris was talking about Wolves being one of the lowest scorers, but ironically, they're playing some really nice looking football. I like the football that they're playing under Bruno. Hopefully, that translates into goals, and they are able to climb up the table. But Connor in the chat saying, "Do they make Europe?" I can't see it. I really can't. I think where they are now is probably where they're looking at finishing around 14th, safe of relegation, but
I think they'd
not
take
really
that.
challenging. Yeah.
Just for context, by the way, Bruno is 14-1 and 6th favourite for the sack already. And Hessen and Hessenhartel, he is a 16-1.
I'm surprised that I thought he'd be way better odds because he's not had a good start to the season.
I mean, the odds are always based on how much people bet. They're not based on the actual
of course
how likely they are. I mean, you got to think, if it was based on how likely they are, Sean Dyche would be the bottom because he's just signed a 4-year contract and he's been there 10 years and he's the most important part of the club. But no, he's like 11th or something like that. So
Matt, I'm doing maths. So talk about yourself.
I'm doing maths.
12th.
So we'll stay silent so that I don't distract you because I know you need your full attention when you're doing maths.
Indeed, you do know.
Usually, you just leave that stuff to Graham.
And even he gets it wrong a lot of the time. Well,
27.27% of the time.
Very good. He's 12th. He's 12th on the list. Yes. So I do worry for Southampton. I worry for them a great deal. They haven't replaced after selling half their decent players. And Wolves starting to come good now. Just get away from a Nuno style, which leads us to the other game we covered this weekend.
Yes.
Arsenal 3, Tottenham 1.
And this was Nuno style. We said whilst in the build up to this match that these look like two teams who were very much in transition. Arsenal, the biggest spenders in the league, but yet we're doing worse this season than they were at this time last season. Tottenham were top of the league last season, and now they look a shadow of the former self. Their talisman clearly doesn't want to be there, was clearly isolated, not interested in scoring goals. and that came through. We noted that they Arsenal made kind of like a little tactical change where they played the just behind Aubameyang the three youngsters of Odegaard, Saka, and Smith Rowe, and I think it worked absolute wonders. That first half was glorious to watch. That was reminiscent of the Arsenal Invincibles, just how they absolutely capitulated this Tottenham side. You can see that there was a passion there. There was strength. I certainly don't think that Arteta's out of the woods. I think tactically he's a very bang average manager. I think he's got the passion of a block of cheese. I think he looks like a plastic Ken doll. But this Arsenal team, I miss watching this Arsenal team because when Arsenal play well, it's a great thing to watch. I want more of this Arsenal team. I want more of Saka. I want more of Smith Rowe. I want more of Odegaard. I want an Aubameyang that can lead the line, that can inspire his team to do well. I think that Ben White and Gabriel at the back were solid. I think we mentioned that seeing them together, it improves Ben White. I think Tomiyasu on at left back was stunning. I think this was a massive improvement for Arsenal, and then just more of Tottenham tumbling. Harry Kane just felt like he didn't want to be on the pitch. It was sad to watch from a Tottenham standpoint, should I say?
Absolutely. Chris popped in the chat briefly. I don't know how much you saw the game live, but it was easy, I felt, for Arsenal. They could have had like 6 or 7, I felt.
As Chris froze, I think Chris may have froze. But you're right. I mean, statistically, Tottenham had the more possession. But I think Arsenal felt comfortable enough that Tottenham weren't really going to get out of that midfield. And for long periods, they didn't. I think everybody for Arsenal stood up to be counted. Xhaka, I mean, we've said time and time again about he's this kind of like Jekyll and Hyde character. He can have a control and win games, or he can be the person that makes you lose games when he loses his mind and gets sent off. He had a really good game. It was an impressive performance by Arsenal, and it was just a letdown from Tottenham. There was only Son who really kind of came out with any kind of glory. Everybody else they may as well have not turned up. It was pathetic from every single member of Tottenham outside perhaps Son.
Absolutely. And welcome Chris back to the chat. Welcome back. So we also say hello to Simon in the chat and Sharon in the chat. Welcome,
hello, guys.
All of you, to the weekend wrap up called Volley here on Radio Techers. Chris, give us your thoughts on the horror show at the Emirates as far as Tottenham were concerned.
I was about to say it wasn't a horror show for one of the teams. I think, because I didn't watch this game live, I watched it after the fact. You get a sort of different perspective once you know the result. So the way I was looking at it well, what positives could we get from Spurs' side? Obviously, people are going to be analysing to see, how Spurs, were awful and, Arsenal tore them apart. But I thought, I'll do differently and I'll try to look into see what Spurs did right. Right, now for what Spurs did wrong.
Nailed it.
I'm going to get a sound effect button for next time you do that, brilliant, because you deserve a round of applause for that. Brilliant.
Yeah, I just, it was nothing. There was no impetus. They didn't care. You wouldn't have thought that this was a derby. North London derbies traditionally, whilst the teams, both Arsenal and Spurs, they'll fluctuate in quality, whilst the fans will fluctuate in quality in terms of atmosphere. The games themselves are always feisty. Whether they're good games or not, they're always feisty. The Spurs players didn't give two shits. It looks like, there was just nothing. There was no passion. There was no fire. There was no desire. There was just nothing. There was no impetus. And that midfield three, because good teams are always based on their midfield. And that midfield three of Dele Alli, Højbjerg, and Ndombele, that's just, it was awful. They played awful. Højbjerg played fine. I won't say he played good. I won't say he played bad. Dele Alli got hauled off at half time because he was awful. And Ndombele got hauled off because he wasn't much better. And it's when you're getting torn apart by Arsenal, it's definitely not a good sign. And I think, Spurs always have a good honeymoon period at the start of the season. But I think, Nuno, he's lost 3 on the bounce, and they're just not scoring. Harry Kane was absolutely non-existent. It feels like, he was dead set on his move to Manchester City. Don't get me wrong, I can't get into the player's mind, but it really does feel like he was dead set on that move to Manchester City, and the fact that he hasn't got it, he's just uptold. It just seems like a team that doesn't care. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get much out of that. To say they were top of the league after 3 games, they've scored 4 goals in 6 games. That's to say you've got one of the best centre forwards in Europe playing for you. That is absolutely shocking.
And the scary thing about that fact, Chris, is that they've actually had Harry Kane available for 2 of those 3 games they scored in. Did he score? I think he might have scored in one of them. But obviously Spurs hasn't scored a single goal in the last 3 games. They've shipped 9 goals in 3 matches. I thought it was at the time, it's the first time since 2004 they've conceded 3 goals in 3 consecutive Premier League matches.
Yeah, I think one way to kind of really rubber stamp Spurs' problems is they had the majority of the ball. They had the most possession, but yet they couldn't get out of midfield to the point where Lucas Moura was actually coming to track back to get the ball because the midfield 3, and even when they brought on the substitutes of Skip and Royal and Tanganga, even then he had to come back and create his own chances because nobody was willing to pass the ball forward. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not showing any kind of forward momentum, any kind of wanting to win games. I think Nuno is way out of his depth at Spurs. I think Wolves were certainly his level. He was being found out there in terms of how his style was, and I think at Tottenham it's just been magnified. And I don't think he's long in the job. But who else takes that job? Who can save this Tottenham team? Because you've got players who couldn't give a toss. You've got your main striker who wants out. It's not looking good for Spurs.
Well, he was 8th choice as well, wasn't he? He was 8th choice.
I mean, people were turning the job down. People accepted the job, then turning it down. It's ridiculous. They played better under Ryan Mason than they did under Nuno. Yeah. And that's saying something.
And he wasn't even considered for the job full time.
Well, I mean, he's 12 years old.
Yeah,
true, but for a guy whose career was cut tragically short, I think that second game of his career, he's leading a team out at Wembley for a major cup final. I still don't believe that they sacked Mourinho because of poor results. It's because he didn't agree with the European Super League stuff, and Levy said
it was a distraction.
Yeah,
there's no other excuse, other than it was a distraction to sack Mourinho a week before a cup final. If there's ever a time that Jose Mourinho is going to pull it out of the bag, it's in a cup final. The man wins you trophies.
Exactly. Either we are the winner, whether or not we like him or not. I personally despise the man, but he gets the job done.
Yeah, and Spurs haven't won a trophy in 30, 40 years.
Not quite that long, buddy. It's only last decade.
Well,
but it does feel like that for Tottenham.
I mean, as we mentioned on the show, this is a team that came third in a 2-horse race for the title. And I think those days are long, long gone. I think this is a Spurs team that's going to struggle this season.
Yeah.
And I think that will guarantee Kane leaving next summer for sure.
I think he's itching for a move in January.
Mm-hmm.
He wants out. It's clear he wants out.
Of course he does, yeah.
He's
It was
not
his own
interested
fault
at
for,
all.
Having his agent be his brother and signing that 6-year contract. It's his own fault. He should have done what Grealish did and said, I want Champions League football, so I'll get a release clause in my contract.
Yeah.
It's a gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy. I wouldn't wipe my ass with that. It means literally nothing. He's a businessman.
It would be if I paid people printed on, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we also need to touch on Arsenal a little bit in this side of things as well, which was how you talked about Odegaard, Smith Rowe, and young Saka, and you were wax lyrical about them, Mags, and there's something else.
Yeah, you're looking at the three players. I mean, Saka's 20. I think Smith Rowe maybe 21. Odegaard 23 maybe. I mean, that's a midfield three for the next decade. I mean, we were saying last season that there were three of the players who showed passion when Arsenal were really struggling, when the likes of Aubameyang and Lacazette really couldn't give a shit, when the likes of Luis really couldn't give a toss. They were the ones showing grit and to build a front line around those three. I think it's absolute brilliance. Whether Arteta keeps with that or whether he mixes it up, I think he would be daft to not build that team around these three. They were unplayable. It's as simple and clear as that. If these had come up against City or Chelsea, I think we'd have seen very similar results. These three were unplayable this weekend, and it was glorious to watch.
Yeah,
it was.
I mean, I've always been a fan of Smith Rowe. I've liked him ever since he was on loan at Huddersfield. I thought he showed his quality there, and he's sort of transitioned that into this Arsenal team really well. He's provided that sort of thrust that they needed. Saka as well. I mean, we all know Saka's quality, so I'm not going to dwell too much on him. And Odegaard as well. A player who came in on loan in January. He wasn't that impressive. He didn't really have too much chance to shine. But this season, he does seem like he's now that he's there permanently, he's being embedded more. We actually made a video, myself and Tanner, about Odegaard coming back to Arsenal that got more views than your video on Odegaard, by the way, Max. I'm just going to say that.
I mean, collectively, it got good views, so I'm happy at that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Where we analysed Odegaard's numbers and what he'd bring to this Arsenal team, and I sort of came to the conclusion that he wouldn't be brilliant. He wouldn't give them anything that they don't already have. But it seems like if they're playing with that front three, with Aubameyang up front or Lacazette up front, it feels like that, they all bring something different, which, with a midfield three, especially if, sort of attacking midfield three, that's what you need.
Yeah. And Tamahashi did a great job as well. I mean, I've not seen a player blood in that quickly at fullback.
He was stunning. I gave him man of the match. I thought he was that good, and the way he and Saka were switching roles to be have that chemistry so early in your career with two players of that caliber. I think that's a really good setup down that side.
And
I was very impressed.
You got to remember, of course, the language barrier as well. So if they've got understanding as well, then that's phenomenal work. Phenomenal work for sure. We'll move on to the last game in a moment. I just want to, something that came to my head is that you can tell how much they trust these three players because it can be a token thing to some people, but at big clubs, numbers that you're given are a big deal. Number 7, being the Saka, you've got people who have won over the years. David Platt, Robert Pires, legends of the club. Then there's Bergkamp, number 10. Now you see Smith Rowe wearing that. Number 8. I'm trying to remember who won number 8. Lundberg, Petit, legends who wore that. No, he was number 8 at Chelsea, number 17 at Arsenal, I'm sure. James Mobile will confirm that, I'm sure. But big names have worn those numbers and pressure comes with that. And you mentioned last year, Meg, when you saw that shirt, they're moulding that team around him, and it seems they are.
Yeah, and before we move on, there's someone else who I've certainly given a lot of grief to, who really stood up to be counted in this game, and that was Aaron Ramsdale. I think he was really solid. The few chances that Spurs had, I thought that Ramsdale, while still not worth what they spent on him, he was certainly an improvement over Leno. And I thought he had a really good game. He really stood out for me. But if Arsenal can have these kind of performances week in, week out, I think we're getting close to them being a top 6 team again.
Absolutely. Ramsdale's save onto the bar at the end, it was chef's kiss.
It was a great save.
Absolutely brilliant. Right, so the last game of the evening, which was happening at the same time as training was going on earlier on, but we have caught up with what was going on, which was Crystal Palace 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 1. Gentlemen, this was a game of last-minute goals, both halves.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
go first. Well, I was actually going to ask Mag something. I mean, obviously, you'll have seen the darting run that Conor Gallagher made in the 62nd minute. I was just wanting to get your thoughts on that.
I didn't see that, as you fully well know. I didn't. You absolute tosspot. What I have seen, though, I was impressed with from Mopay. I thought that for a last-minute take was a brilliant, very kind of brave finish. A great ball by Veltman. But Trossard, Jesus Christ, he absolutely went through the Palace player. I can't even remember which Palace player it actually was now for the
I think penalty. That was Conor Gallagher.
It may well have been. It was actually, yeah. It says it was Conor Gallagher. But yeah, it's a draw. On terms of statistics, they both were pretty well matched. 8 shots each, 3 on target for Palace, 4 for Brighton. So I think a draw was a fair result.
Yeah, I think that something that was very obvious for me anyway was the fact that Brighton really missed Yves Bissouma. I think midfield 2 of Lallana and Gross doesn't work. I don't think it has enough energy required to be a midfield 2. Especially when they've sold Ben White, so they don't have him stepping forward into the midfield like they did last season. You've got Burn, Duncan, Duffy, who are good centre halves, but they're not exactly the most technically gifted centre halves. I'll say that they tend to be 3 of the same sort of, not lumps, but they're more physical than they're not going to be spraying 30-yard passes everywhere.
Yeah, they're certainly not ball playing defenders.
Yeah, and I think that if they'd have had Yves Bissouma, that he really would have helped sort of contain that Palace midfield, especially Conor Gallagher. I think Conor Gallagher was absolutely brilliant in this game, and personally, I don't understand why Chelsea chose to loan him out and bring in Saul, because I think Gallagher's brilliant, and I personally rather have Gallagher than Saul at my club personally.
Has Saul had any game time yet?
He started the first. He started the first game, really struggled, and then was hauled off. But I think you're right. I think lack for lack, Saul's probably the better player, but he's certainly not. He's certainly not up to scratch in terms of Premier League. I think Conor Gallagher would do a better job as of now.
Well, I think the thing is with Saul is he's good at everything, but he's not outstanding in one thing, sort of thing. I don't really know. I've watched Saul quite a bit when he was coming to the Premier League. I watched him quite a bit, and I don't really know what type of midfielder he is. I know we're talking a lot about Saul on Crystal Palace versus Brighton, but I don't really know what type of midfielder he is. He's a decent tackler, but he's not brilliant. So he's not like a brilliant number 6 or whatever. He's not a brilliant passer. He's not spraying 40-yard balls everywhere. He's not a box-to-box midfielder. He's not a big dominating physical midfielder. I don't really know what he is. Whereas with Conor Gallagher, you know what he is. He is a midfielder who's going to bring the energy. He's going to get back and forth constantly. He's a box-to-box player. He'll take the ball, he'll take it out wide. Get crosses in. He just brings that energy. And I think he's brilliant, Conor Gallagher.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
bright future for sure. Obviously, a little bit of mention to Wilfried Zaha and another extra penalty. Chance of a premium bow in this game.
Yeah, I think obviously because it is a derby, it's going to be a tighter game. Oh well, it's not a derby, but it's a rivalry somehow. I don't know. I'm guessing it's because they were the two teams left without rivalry, so
like the last to be picked.
Exactly, yeah. No, but I think it was a game that both teams didn't want to lose. Obviously, Brighton, I think nerves probably got to them because those players will know that a win would have taken them top of the table, and Palace wouldn't have wanted to lose to Brighton, in front of their own fans. So I think a draw was probably fair on the balance of things. I think chances were shared out evenly. But yeah, I mean, Brighton's starts of the season have really surprised. Me certainly, especially considering coming out of the transfer window, a lot of Brighton fans were unhappy that they didn't buy a striker.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they certainly needed one. They certainly needed a significant goal for it. But one thing that they've had in their time in the Premier League is they played nice football. It's been really good to watch. And last season, I think they didn't get the results that perhaps their football deserved. Whereas certainly the early stages of this season, they are able to convert those good performances into wins and gain points on the board. Whether that's going to be maintained, I have doubts, but they certainly can be glad that they're not already in that relegation mire, and they're essentially sitting in European places right now.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is they do have a tough run coming up, Brighton. They haven't really come up against a top quality team. I mean, Leicester have been struggling, and they're probably the best team that they've come up against. They beat them, and they lost to Everton. But apart from that, they drew with Crystal Palace, they beat Brentford, they beat Watford, and they beat Burnley. They're not exactly, tough tests. I mean, coming up, they've got Arsenal, Norwich, Man City, Liverpool, Aston Villa. They've got a tough stretch of games. So it'll be interesting to see, where they are come the other side of that.
It's still bizarre you saying those words. If Brighton had won, they would have been top of the table.
Yeah, but they've been top of the table already.
No, but they would have been back to top of the table in front of Liverpool, City, Chelsea, United, and Everton. They are still only 1 point off the top, which is very, very impressive work.
Absolutely.
So Brighton plays some nice stuff, and hopefully we can see some more of them. Palace have had a reasonably good start, but in terms of what they've been playing, they're still getting results.
Yeah, I think they're a team that's certainly in a transition almost. I mean, a transition is probably too strong a word. They need to gel as a team. This is a club that had 15 players out of contract at the end of last season.
Yeah, like that,
a manager who was retiring. They brought in a somewhat unproven Patrick Vieira, and then the transfer team that they've got there have worked wonders to bring in some really good players and really kind of fill out that team. But you need that time for those players to gel together and to get that kind of chemistry. So to have 6 points now, I think that's probably better than they could have expected with the amount of changes that they had in the squad. And I think the likes of Edouard will certainly come good. Gueye is a great player to have on your books. So I have no real concerns over Palace. I think the results will come.
Yeah, so they come fast enough for their benefit. Right, so yeah, Liverpool finished Matchday 6 at top of the table. Norwich remain at the bottom. Burnley remain second bottom, but they certainly don't deserve to be there, gentlemen.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
I'm saying they don't deserve to be there. They will come good.
Liverpool are top, but they certainly don't deserve to be there after the performance against Brentford. So
I fully agree. So yeah, that was the first the first volley, as it were.
First of many, hopefully.
For the many, definitely. I thank you very much, Mags and Chris, for joining me for this first episode. If you'd like to give your socials.
You're welcome.
Chris, how about you tell people where they can get hold of you on social media, or if you actually want them to?
There.
Thank you very much, at Chris _BFC_. And Mr. Kablam, where can people get hold of you?
So you can find me on Twitter at PodfatherMags. I'm usually on a Radio Techers show here and then. Not that often really. I'm a bit part player here at Techers, but yeah, follow me on Twitter. That's where you'll find links to everything I'm involved in.
Always a good thing. Find me at MadTech UK. Make sure that you give this channel a like, a share, and a subscribe. And remember to ring the bell for whenever you see any of us go live with something awesome and amazing here on Radio Techers. Could be anything from football to UFC, or who knows what could end up on Radio Techers one day. So yeah, on behalf of
maybe Formula One.
You never know. Maybe it will. So thank you to everybody for watching along with us. And yeah, thank you for getting involved in the chat. And we will catch you next time. We're out of here.
Kablam.